Okay, it's 7:03. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Annalise. I'm the manager of the SHLA program. Some of you might recognize me if you were a part of the program last year. If this is your first time attending a SHLA session, welcome. A little bit how these sessions work. We're going to start off with a presentation today, and then the session will end with a Q&A. There were some previously gathered questions that we'll include in the Q&A, but there also will be room to ask questions in the chat. You might notice that if you're in this program last year, we're kind of making some small adjustments to how we operate within the Zoom. If you would like to be unmuted, you'll just need to like raise your hand, um, and I can unmute you. But for the most part, we'll just be keeping everybody on mute for right now. Um, and also with the Q&A at the end, if you have any questions, I recommend writing them down on a sheet of paper. You can put them in the chat. There's just like times where things can get buried, so up to you. But we'll have questions answered at the end. And you can just raise your hand or put any of those questions in the chat when that time comes. Um, I also want to give a quick shout out to our SHLA sponsors this year. We have ExxonMobil, Honeywell, and General Motors. I'm trying to think if there's anything else off the top that I needed to cover, but I don't think so. So we're going to go ahead and get into the session. I'm really excited. We are being joined tonight by two members from two of SWE's affinity groups. If you don't know what affinity groups are, you're going to get to learn about them tonight. They're another option for connection and growing within SWE. We are being joined by Gisella Lamas from the Indigenous Peoples Affinity Group and Doris Moreno from the Latinos Affinity Group. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to them.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we can go to the next slide and then just a couple of things that we do want to make sure that we have through the sessions. Just practice ongoing learning and unlearning. Center uplift affinity group voices and hopefully become an authentic ally. So let's move on to the next one. And as Annalise talked about, I am here representing the Indigenous Peoples Affinity Group today. So the next slide. And as an affinity group, we always start with our indigenous people, actually. We start with the land acknowledgement. I am located in Paducah, Kentucky, and that's why, therefore, I'm using the statement for the state of Kentucky. And basically, what it is like this land has long been home to diverse native communities, including the Shawnee, the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, and the Osage nations, among others whose presence and connection to this land continues today. So you might have seen this in the past, you might have seen this before. If not, land acknowledgement, what does that mean? It's more than a sentence to us. It's an invitation to recognize history, honor Indigenous resilience, and commit to respectful relationship building. And if you have noticed on this slide, both words Native and Indigenous start with a capital letter, and that's to represent our community. So let's move on to the next slide. One of the things that people generally ask me, what happened to the Indigenous people? Where are they? Are they a thing of the past? And no, we're not a thing of the past. We're still thriving even today. You might be part Indigenous and you don't know it, but there is an enormous amount of people, Indigenous people throughout the world other than in Native America. So just in the United States, the most recent number that we have as representation is about 6 million. In Canada, 1.7, and where it came from is about 4 million Indigenous people. But notice that there is throughout the entire globe. You might not have seen or you might not see on this map a little bit in Europe, but that doesn't mean that there's not Indigenous people there. Even today, there's quite a few. And some of them I've met in person, so friends with that. But just focusing on where I am right now, Kentucky has been home to Indigenous peoples for over 12,000 years. If you ask a Kentuckian, most of them, although we come in all shapes and colors, are still very in nature, in contact with their indigenous culture. So the natives that lived here permanently, besides cultivating land, they built communities and practiced rich cultural traditions. I live in Paducah, which is really close to the Trail of Tears. And if you're not aware of this, this was a forced relocation of Native American tribes in the 1830s due to the Indian Removal Act. So thousands migrated, and let's put it migration as the action, moving from the east all the way to the west of Mississippi. Because of this kind of harsh conditions, several died from disease, hunger, but they still stayed here. Some of them stayed in Kentucky, and they are part of what the community that we call Kentuckians today. So let's move on to the next one. And just to talk a little bit about what's allyship and what is in practice, when we talk about that, what we really want people to be is genuine, like willing to learn, support the group, respect the group, show some humility and action. So a couple of things that we would like for people to do, specifically regards to the land acknowledgement, is to really start a conversation. Sometimes you live in a place that you don't really know the history behind that place, and it's always important to get to know more of that. It's always also good for us as Indigenous people to, when someone amplify our voices and educate others, just because as a rule of thumb, Indigenous people tend to be more shy and really shy away from any type of boasting or social media. There are opportunities for you to build long-term relationships anywhere, but specifically in SWE as part of our affinity group. And one thing that's always important is to embrace discomfort as part of growth and accountability. We are not your enemy. You are not our enemy. And it's always like there's room for growth and understanding in that. So let's move on to the next slide. There are things that you can do in order to educate more about the history of the people that are thriving as engineers today. Today, we have several literature which were written by natives. One example that I would like to show you here is Marigold Roth. She is no longer, she is actually a mathematician and an engineer. And she's also part of the Cherokee Nation. So if you really want to hear more about people like that, there's always a lot of information on those and what they have done in terms of the progress of engineering. And then on the next slide, I would like to show you a couple of engineers from SWE. So these are basically the leads for the Indigenous Peoples AG, and I included my picture in there as well. But the both our co-leads are Dine. So another name for that, if you're not aware, is Navajo. But we also have Laura Smith, who's just a Cherokee, and myself as part of the group. So we would love to have you here as well. And then on the next slide, if you want to get involved and get to know more about us, we are present on Instagram, LinkedIn. We also have meetups at SWE conference, and we are constantly publishing blogs to kind of educate people more about the Indigenous people community and anything related to that. So, if you want to get to know more of us, like we're open to have this conversation, it's a really great place to do that. And then on the next slide, which I think is the final one, is really about the references that we have in terms of the content that we have prepared for SWE. But one thing that I always like to tell my students, and they really get involved in that, is actually looking at the powwow calendars. If you live in the United States, it's really a fun event for you to participate where people from all nations and indigenous nations I'm referring to come together to show a little bit of their culture. Think about it like a dance competition or contest where we all get together to do that. So you just need to look at your state and you can find one. Everybody's welcome. Sometimes they charge you, but it's really cheap. And I think it's an opportunity for you to get to know a little bit more about the culture of your own state. So it's just a fun fact for you. There's going to be one close to home in September. So we're looking forward to that. But they're all over the United States. So it's really fun for you to do that if you have the opportunity. And with that, I'll pass it on to Doris.
Thank you, Gisela. So just confirming, can you guys see this back in presentation mode?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
I can. Thank you. All right, so I'm here representing our Sweet Latinos Affinity Group. We call them AGs for short, as you may come across around sweet content. And on behalf of our Latinos AG, I am here today with you. So I'm Doris, and a little bit about myself. I am myself an engineer, but I was born and raised in Mexico. And my engineering career has taken me to places around the world. Um, so I was able to live in France for a little bit, where I saw the snow for the very first time in my life, and I was able to ski, and that's something I'm really passionate to date. And eventually, I moved into the Midwest, first Chicago, then Michigan, and I currently work for the Kellogg Company. So the pictures of products that you see here are some of the products I've been able to launch. So if you hadn't eaten them, know that there was a Latino engineer involved in those flavors. And I've launched a few product developments for food across the world. I love nature. I'm really passionate about nature, and that's what keeps me moving today. And I love Chicago, where it's currently home for me. Um, this is one of the latest products I'm really proud of, the Pringles Mingles. If you've eaten them, I'd love to hear about it in the chat. If you have not, I will encourage you to try them next time you're in the store. There are first Pringles that are not in a can. So that's like just to show you some routes you can do as an engineer, also within the food industry. But obviously, our AG wouldn't be possible without many talented women engineers that are also part of our sweet community. And so, our Latinos AG has a few different committees. So, these are only a few of them because we're still like updating the pictures. So, we have Myra, Claudia, Eileen, Sunita, Marielle, and Heather. I want to tell you an interesting story about Sunita here at the center, because Sunita is actually her heritage is Asian, and when she's actually one of our, she has been a chair for the Sui Latinos AG, and you would think like, well, how is like someone that's not Latino and that has not Latino heritage like has been so involved. And so her story was really it hit close to the heart to me, and I think it's one worth sharing because it's really inspiring. So she learned Spanish across her education. She grew up in Kentucky, and she just wanted to learn a second language. So she actually speaks Spanish like a native to date. And then most recently, like in the past few years, she has a foster kid who only speaks Spanish, and so it's just like they have formed this bond, and she joined the Sweet Latinos AG, trying to learn to understand the culture better, so that she can not only be better like in her personal life with her kid, but also just to practice something that she was passionate about in the past and a language she learned. And so we've found this community where there's many of us are bilinguals here. Some people speak even more than two languages, so it's like very enriching. And this is to say that you don't necessarily have to be of a specific demographic or background in order to be part of these affinity groups, because what makes them so great is the diverse community that we're able to combine and to bring these ideas together to make um, SWE across the globe like a better place for women engineers to thrive. And so who we are, So we're women engineers. We have engineers that are in college, in the academy, in the industry, who identify as Latino, are Hispanic or of Latin American heritage, or are allies of this community, like Sunita. And we are a team that's located across the U.S. So I'm in the Midwest, but we also have a few leadership team members that are on the West Coast. Some of them also in the East Coast. So we're in a bunch of different time zones, yet we make it work. Um, to make our six different like committees come together. So our group, it's open to all SWE members that are interested in participating. And currently our leadership team has the community outreach portion, where is a portion where we do a lot of like volunteering activities. um, think of it as either with our local communities in the different areas where we might be present. We also have a team for social media who keeps our social media, our Instagram, LinkedIn page that we're about to relaunch up to date. Also, we have a mentoring lead in there that basically manages based on the needs of our members, whether more professional mentorship, or you're transitioning from like maybe college to your first job, or in this case like kind of high school and trying to go into an engineering career, but maybe you're not sure where. So we'd like to hear that, and the mentoring pieces would like to guide people in the different stages where they could be at. And then professional development, so like for people, engineers with more experience. And one of our biggest events is Hispanic Heritage Month, that happens from September 15 to October 15. So that's something that it's celebrated nationwide, and probably one of our biggest events that we put together. There's a lot of sweet like newsletters, articles that go in there, but we also have activities. And also during the week conference every October, we also have a few activities for people to learn, for like our AG to engage, to meet people that maybe you have interacted with virtually, but then you get to meet them in person. And it's like a really fun way to get engaged with our affinity group as well. So I want to hear here like quick guess. How many Latinas in STEM do you think are in our country today? I'd love to see some numbers in the chat, like just Latinas in STEM. What's the number?
With one person put 500,000, 800,000.
Okay. So we're aiming high.
Yeah. Yeah,
I love that.
750,000. There's 10,000. Yeah.
Okay. So I actually am realizing I did not put like the full number. It's some percentage. So I'll have to actually probably had to go back into my notes and see like overall what's like our women population in the US, and then from the women in STEM population. But I kind of wanted to give you an idea. So the latest report that was published last year, it was the state of Latinas, and it states that out of 43% of women that are active in the corporate workforce here in the US, only 5% of them are Latinas. So there's already, we know, like a gender gap across the industry, even more when it comes to STEM. And out of that, there is a tiny percentage that it's occupies the Latina population. And then the more uphill you go into the ladder, the bigger gap you will find. So think about like management positions, CEOs. So when I actually read this, I was like, it cannot be. But then I realized how many VPs out of a company I know that are Latinas, and then how many CEOs I know of. And it was really a tiny number that I could think of, it's not even like close to the 1%. So it is amazing when you contrast it against knowing that 1/4 of the US population currently it's of Latino heritage or is Hispanic. So when you think about that, it's like, wow, we have like almost a 25%, yet there's like a tiny minority of women that are going into STEM degrees from this demographic and are pursuing careers. So I think the biggest way to overcome this is sharing what's possible. Because I heard recently in a conference that people cannot know what they want if they don't know what the options are. So I think the more we talk about STEM, the more we talk about engineering, the more we share what's possible within one same degree can open many different, several paths for a career. And the more women know it's possible, the more people would be interested and the more women we can bring over. So this is kind of like graphically at a glance, just to see over like the comparison of like the gender gap. So overall, like when we think of like corporate world, from entry level to the C-suite, which is where the CEOs are at, if you see at entry level, there's probably a little more 52 against 42. So we're kind of getting there like 50-50. When you climb into the managerial ladder, then you have like a 60-30. So there's a little bigger gap in there. When you think about senior managers, director level, we start seeing that a little more separate. And you see like the percentage in yellow down here of like how Latinas can kind of climb on that ladder. And then as we get into the VP, there's even like bigger gap, the senior vice presidents, bigger gap. And when you think of the CEOs, there's definitely like huge gender gap that we gotta overcome, the 70-27, and there's like a tiny little bit in there where kind of like Latinas are starting to get into that corporate ladder. So this is just to say like things take time. This is how our statistics are as of 2023. But it would be interesting to see how this changes in the upcoming years and to see more women obviously like up in the C-suite. So I invite you today to learn with us, keep learning with us, and here's where and how you can do it. So SWE specifically has a lot of DEI articles, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They're up in this website, altogether.swe.org. If you scan the QR code, you'll also be able to access this landing page directly. And I wanted to point out, like, every month there's like different things that are celebrated in there. So like you'll find information about all the SWE affinity groups. This is a post from 2 months ago where there was an article about like SWE and the Science Squad, Latinx, that they do activities in STEM for girls interested. So I think this is a really interesting way to also learn what might be close to you and to attend some of those activities, and just echoing what Gisella was saying too, like learn more about it. The more you learn, the easier it is to approach situations and to lose feeling uncomfortable to something that might be different, or that you might not be used to. So if you want to learn more about Design Squad, this is like another nonprofit, but this is also, I invite you to access. I think it's very interesting the way they engage with kids, to kind of teach them around engineering. And even though there is a Design Squad for Latinx, it's open to everyone. And get involved, even though I know you're not yet in college, but you might be soon. This is our QR code to kind of access into, to follow us on Instagram. I encourage you to also share with any friends and family that you know could be interested, like in engineering topics. We we post there the events we are having like across the US, whether that's a conference, that might be a virtual talk, to learn about specific topics around leadership style, like careers, different types of careers that you can do, different places where you can work at, even being of the same like we have a couple mechanical engineers in the group, to give an example, and they all work in different types of industries. And sometimes when people hear one story or another, they're like, wow, I didn't know I could do that within my degree. And that's like the really nice part about diversity. You get to learn a lot of things, and um, that's it. So with this, I would like to close, and let's go into the Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Gisella and Doris. That was really good information, and I think it's so great to be able to learn about the affinity groups. Um, I'll start off with some of the questions that were sent in earlier. Um, One that we got was, how has allyship shaped your own leadership journey in SWE or your career? And you both can answer this. Gisella, if maybe you want to start with this one.
I think, for me, leadership has always been a challenge just because I don't like to be in the position of leadership. But once you understand that when you are, then that's when you are able to make meaningful changes. And I think the importance of allyship and leadership for me was that um, that role will allow me to bring more people that I need to the table, to bring more chairs to the table. And I think that's how it shaped me.
That's great. Doris, if you want to go next.
Yes, I think pretty similar in that sense of like really thinking, if I'm already a minority, how am I going to drive a change? But then realizing that you don't have to necessarily be in a position of power and have like the supreme title to drive that change. Um, Someone told me once that leaving a legacy, it's around us. And so leadership to me comes back to, what's that legacy that you want to leave? And when you think about it, even like you might be on the school bus, or you might be at a restaurant, or at a train station, at an airport waiting for your flight. And then if you just see someone that maybe wants to talk to you, and you discover they might be trying to decide which career path they want to go to. I happened to run into, coming back from work one day, happened to run at a restaurant to a waitress whose um, daughter was a first generational college student, and she was going into engineering. And when she heard I was there for work and I was an engineer, she was like, do you mind if I can get put you in contact with my daughter? So we chatted, and I just gifted my time to this person. And she was able then to text me like, hey, I graduated. She actually attended a SWE conference. She landed her first job out of it, and she didn't know about SWE before our talk. So just thinking that everywhere around you, you can drive that change by talking to the person next to you that you wouldn't normally talk to. That's a way to leave legacy, and that's a leadership skill.
That's amazing. I love that story. Another question that we got in was, how does SWE make you feel empowered as a person of color? And either one of you, whoever wants to start, can start.
I guess we can follow the order. But I think sweet for me has empowered me as a woman, and in a way that I have not seen before, just because think about being a minority in STEM. So all of us women, girls, kind of relate to that. Going to a professional organization which you have tons of men there talking all the time, and they might be good, they might be not so good, but there's just something different about SWE when you go and attend the conference in which you realize there's more people like you. And when you have these affinity groups meetups as well, realizing that there's even more people like you, that has been really eye-opening. To the point of view of Indigenous people, I have always been one that I had to suppress my heritage for the longest time. We were not supposed to be open about it. And Sui Indigenous Peoples AG was really great and fundamental for me to be more open about that. To the point that this year, or I think it was last year for the month of celebration of Indigenous peoples, I posted something on Sui on Instagram, and my entire family despised me for doing that, for making it open. Like, you're not supposed to do that. And that's really sad. So the fact that I have this sisterhood of this affinity group to help me through this process has been instrumental to me. So to pay it forward, I want to do the same for others. So I think that's kind of like what Doris talked about, legacy. It's all about that. Empowers me to the point that I have to face, I think, my own family in order to bring pride to the heritage that's so pretty for us.
Thank you for sharing that. It makes me happy to hear that you've been able to find that support like at SWE, especially when it hasn't always been present in other places. So I'm happy for that at least. Doris, if you want to answer the question.
Um, so I was kind of writing my ideas, and then I think they're gonna be really similar. It comes down to realizing my first SWE conference, because I was involved at some chapters, but like my first SWE conference, I was like, when I met the Latinos AG, we actually met through COVID virtually, and the conference after that is when I finally was able to see them in person. And to me, the big aha moment was like, I'm not the only one, and there's more of us. So SWE has been a way to connect not only with other women engineers, but with a lot of minority groups, and realizing just that, like, there's more of us, and it has been a way to connect without barriers, without biases. Because I think everyone um, across SWE, it's if there's one thing I can find in common across every single SWE member I've met, it's like they're open minded and they're not judgmental about things. So I think they're curious. And that's key. I think being curious, keeping that, staying curious throughout the journey. I think the older we get, the more biased we tend to be. And the younger we are, the more curious we are. So, really, the challenge is not losing that curiosity. It's what allows us to be open. And I think that's something that we, throughout all the different activities it does, it truly empowers people and showcases that people carry it with them.
I love that. It makes me really happy to hear that both of you had just so much community with SWE. I think that's so special. I'll hop over to the question that Natalia had asked at the top of the session. She had asked, what are some engaging activities and conversation topics that can create variety in meetings and increase diverse perspectives? Gisella, you can start with this one whenever you're ready.
I think one of the things that are very popular is whenever we invite them, someone who's, I'll just use Indigenous people as an example, but when we invite someone who's non-Indigenous to an event, that's very common for us, and they get to experience all of that. Generally, the rapport is really good, and they want to be more involved, and they get to know and experience things that otherwise they wouldn't, or they wouldn't feel comfortable doing on their own. So that kind of opens up the conversation for more information about it. And it could be an exchange. I think that's always really good.
Yeah, awesome. Doris, if you want to go next.
I'm gonna echo that because want to bring an example. So I was at an organization at work, and they used to be like, "Okay, women engineers, we're gonna send them to SWE." Hispanic or Latino women engineers, let's send them to the Hispanic conference. And then Black engineers that are women, let's send them to the Black engineers conference. And there was like, hey, but wait, we're also women. And like SWE has these affinity groups, and um, sometimes there are like these events that are maybe specific or targeting like a very specific demographic, like Black women engineers. And then I think maybe if you there's a tendency to think like, oh, okay, that means there's only Black women allowed there, so I shouldn't go because I don't fall on that demographic necessarily. And then all you see there is, yes, a lot of like Black women engineers, and create such a great community, but yet we already know that we come from a minority. We already know the stats. And I think what is surprising is when you invite people that are not from that group, and it's eye opening, because then it's like going to a history class in school that you had to pass through. Like it was not an option, you just had to attend. And yet you get so many learnings, even though you're not going to be a historian or an archaeologist. Like it's just, it enriches your knowledge. So I think that is key, like understanding that even though there's a title for a conference, for a meeting, for an affinity group, for it's really open to everyone. And I would say the majority of comments that we've received from people that do not belong, for men that are allies, for non-Latino that are allies, when they go to these places, they're like, wow, why didn't I do this before? Like it gives you so many tools to also understand how to be a better manager, a better leader, a better human with your friends, that you were like a little scared of approaching someone. Like I know for a majority part of my life, I wasn't sure like if saying black was okay. Like I would be like African American, until like one of my best friends, like a black colleague, she was like, I'm black. And like, and then you see, like, she explained to me a lot of things, and I was like, okay. And then it made me just feel more comfortable when I talk about it, and not feeling like, I guess, uneducated in a way that I thought that what I knew limited was true. So,
No, I think that's really great. And also, yeah, just like exposure and like getting to it's important to meet people from all different backgrounds because that's how we learn. Um, we have a I'll go back to
and I want to add something. Sorry, it just
oh
popped
yeah,
on my head right now.
don't go for
Um,
it.
but I think like other activities that I can think of. So something that my organization has been doing, and I think like people have enjoyed, it's like kind of, we have purposefully created like some lunch and learns, or like kind of like trivia, or like fun ways to educate people. So like this question that I pop up, for instance, like, okay, how many Latinas are there in STEM? I think like if you start creating those conversations, that puts things into perspective. And so maybe you come from one perspective, but like, if you so you can try to approach it in a fun way, like we do trivia normally, right? But like with maybe statistics and like numbers that are come from a good source, that can help put into perspective to people about a different group. um, and I think the other piece is a lot of leadership, a lot of those soft skills that you have to develop throughout your career to be able to grow. They really come from, and the most remarkable leaders that we can think of in history, someone you admire, I bet they're all going to have in common cultural intelligence. And that is also like a skill that, I think if that's a topic, and as opposed of like starting it with like, we've done all these things wrong, we're humans, we know we've done mistakes in the past, but the thing is like, what can we do from now on? How do I apply cultural intelligence into a workplace, into school? And then if you teach it to people from that other perspective, rather than like punishing them for the past, I think that's a way you can start creating that conversation.
I think that's awesome. That's a good recommendation on the activity being trivia because that's like fun. It can have like sometimes like a casual element to it, and then you're learning something from it. Like I think that's great. Um, One of the other questions that we got was, what are small but powerful ways students can practice allyship in everyday school or club settings? And Gisella, whenever you're ready.
That's cool. Is that the question?
Yeah,
Okay.
they said school or club settings, but I think also you could, if you wanted to answer it more broadly, just like day to day, that's fine too.
Yeah, that's fine. I think the celebration month kind of started for that purpose, so that you can kind of introduce these things at schools, for example. What I like to do, so I teach, so I am a engineering faculty, and what I like to do is to bring a little bit of my heritage to my classes. So for example, I kind of give a topic on material sciences and then kind of presented the way this is how an indigenous people would see this part, and this is how we use it in specific region, and just to bring that different like perspective, and especially here successful in Kentucky because there's so many people who have the heritage. Right at the end of the class they come to me, it's like, thank you for sharing this, now I feel pride or proud of my heritage or something, like, because we're all hiding it here for some reason. And I think that supports our mission amplify our voices, but I think it will really depend on the intent. What is it you want to do with this? Do you want to explore a new culture? Do you want to learn more about this? Do you want to acknowledge that you might have a bias? And then based on the purpose, then you determine some sort of like an action item to it. I think that's how you should go by it.
That's really good advice, Gisella, especially the like checking yourself for like any biases and like because it was kind of mentioned at the top of the presentation, but you know, being open to learning and unlearning. I think that's really big. Um, Doris, if you want to go next.
Yes, this actually prompted me, and I will share with you, Annalise, and maybe you can circulate it with the audience afterwards. There is actually a free like test, like a quick test that you can do on different types of biases. I forgot which organization launched it, but it's actually something that you can do for free, and it just creates awareness, because I think that's the first step. Like sometimes we can be like, oh no, 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 that's not me, I'm not biased about that. And you might not find it. So I think if you are curious, like I'll share that with that link afterwards, because I just remember I had it and I didn't include it here. But to me it goes like back to like two steps. Like number one, it's like staying curious. Like I think being curious, it's what's gonna allow you to listen to learn, rather than listening to just because you have to, or to reply something quick. If you listen to learn, and this is like an ability that comes with practice, the more like connections you're gonna create with your surroundings and with things that might be normal and daily for you, but you'll realize you're not. Something that just in this presentation was like a big aha moment for me. It's like hearing Gisella talking about the Navajo, and like the other, I wrote it down and I'm now losing it. The other name that Deca, that was
Dine. That's the actual name. It's Dine.
Dine. Okay, so
Yeah.
Dine, and when she said like, oh, like that's like the other name, it's Navajo. I was like, oh my God, I know Navajo people, like they're like in the north part of Mexico in the state of Sonora, but I was like, wow, I just didn't realize like it makes a bunch of sense, but like I those are like connections that if you don't listen and you're not curious, you might not be able to put together. So I think curiosity number one, like stay curious, because that's what's going to make you ask questions. listen and learn from someone that you interact with, from someone that you haven't, but that you might have the opportunity to know. And the other piece, I think, is thinking of how you want people to remember you and how you want people to remember that you make them feel. Because I think that's what we all take at the end. More than what people told me, how did this person made me feel when I was at a meeting? When I was like maybe um, like in school, like trying to speak up, and I was like shy and raising my hand but wasn't sure, and then maybe someone just lift me up by saying like, hey, wait up, this person wants to speak, let's give them the word. And I think just like those tiny actions can help you.
That's really, really great, Doris. I had the same thing. I wasn't even aware that there was a that Navajo actually went by a different name. So like I now I know that I've learned something, and like it's just like important to know those things because it helps people feel seen. Um I think we have time for about one other question. I I'm looking at this like little list of all the questions that we had. I kind of want to ask this one because you kind of started to lead into this, Doris, at the end of what you were just saying. There was one person that asked, how do we balance speaking up for others without speaking over them? So I don't know if either of you maybe have some maybe tips or like insights that you'd want to share with that. Just how to speak up for people without speaking over them.
That's a really great question. And when I read it first, it made me think for a bit, because I was like, it's like a really fine line that you don't want to cross. And yet, there's going to be times where you might cross it without realizing it. Um, and if you do, like, you don't have to punish yourself, but rather learn from it. So I think. Something that comes to mind, and it's like phrases that you might be able to use. I'm thinking kind of like in a meeting corporate setup, but I think like this could also be applicable maybe like in the classroom, or think also when you're doing like a uh, project work and as part of a team. And it kind of gravitates back to where there's always a voice that's louder in the room, that's gonna be the more confident, that people are gonna gravitate and see that person as a leader. um, that doesn't necessarily mean that person is a leader, but for certain there's gonna be a louder voice, always, there always is in the room. So I think like some phrases, for instance, if you are leading that meeting, um, phrases that you can use, you can open up with a question for the audience by simply asking like, okay, we're meeting here to talk about this topic. Before disclosing all the information, ask all the attendees, what are your expectations? And start assigning the word to each of the attendees. Okay, like Gisella and Elise, and so on until you finish with everyone. Um, and then kind of go through the information. And after you review that, also, once you end, it's opening back that forum again. Or if you see someone that it's maybe like, this is a tricky one, because someone might be like, seeing like they're thinking a lot about an answer. So you might think like they have a lot to say. And then you can see like, hey, Gisela, you want to say something to the group, and that might be that thin line where the person might be like, oh no, I don't want to be put in the spot. So that's one approach. If you know a person like so close that you know they definitely want to say something and they don't feel encouraged. But if you don't know that person a lot and they just might be too shy and you don't want to put them on the spot, it's kind of opening the forum again of like, okay, we clearly heard the voice of whoever was speaking louder. And then just saying like, anyone else, any other perspective, anyone that thinks differently, or that wants to share something else that we haven't talked about. Like just asking questions beforehand and after to reassure that everyone there feels welcome and listened to.
That's really good advice, Doris, especially like opening questions, because I do think like sometimes it's also it just can be uncomfortable to be like put on the spot to say something, and doing it in that group way just makes it feel more comfortable and like accessible, I feel like. Gisella, did you have anything you wanted to add with this?
I think I'm gonna tell a story a friend of mine told me once. She's native to Alaska, and as you're aware, they know how to build things to last in Alaska. So whenever you have companies coming over, civil engineering companies coming over, trying to build something in Alaska without asking the locals how to do that, and they want to use concrete at, let's put it like very cold temperatures, that just seems like a lack of understanding of, everything. And so I would say, as part of the story, is like always be humble and then get to know all the sides from everyone. Because, like Dory's example, everybody in the room has a voice, everybody comes with an experience, and it's really important to hear everybody's side just because there might be an answer to a problem that you don't know yet in one of those voices, and we kind of need to hear everyone, but always like be willing to listen. I think the one thing that we stated a couple of times was like really being an active listener. And that's how we generally should be doing for everything.
That's
I
no,
want
that's
to build on
oh yeah.
that. So there's something else that I guess if anyone hearing the call feels anytime that they're a minority in any situation, uh, something really powerful that I try to remember when I'm in those rooms is someone once told me, like, if you are in the room, it's because you've earned that seat. It's because people want to hear from you. If you are in there, it's because you matter. Your opinion matters, and what you want to say, it's relevant to the conversation. So own that seat and remember, like, you're there for a reason.
That's really great advice, Doris. And to Gisella, like hitting on the just always being a listener. And then also I think that's really great to remind yourself that you deserve to be where you like in that room. You deserve it. You don't need to quiet yourself. Um, I think we'll end there with questions. Thank you both so much. I feel like this has just been like a really insightful and like an empowering session. I feel like this just have covered a lot of things that will probably just be relatable for like different a lot of people in the program. And just like being like I feel like we've covered a lot of like standing up for yourself, and then also just like we've learned a lot with being a better ally. So I really appreciate you both coming and speaking with us tonight. Um, I also appreciate everybody in the program that attended tonight. This session is being recorded actively, and it will be put on our YouTube channel. I'll send out an email when it's up and available. And yes, Doris, the bias test that you had, if you want to send that to me, I'll share that with the students. And Gisela, you had some resources that were in your path of the presentation, so I'll make sure to share those in an email as well. So any you guys will all get those. And I want to give a quick another shout out to our sponsors again. It's ExxonMobil, Honeywell, and General Motors. Um, I think that is pretty much it for the Sheila session tonight. The next session is on Wednesday, August 20th, so keep your eyes out for that one. Or your eyes peeled. Keep them open. Keep your eyes out, open, peeled, all of the sayings. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it tonight, everybody. So thank you so much, and you're all free to go.